Hi. This may well be the biggest book haul of my life, certainly the biggest book haul of the last decade or so. It was huge fun assembling. This, by the way, is not all of it. You can't see all the way down to the bottom of the table, but there's a couple more piles around. So, book-wise, the shelf you see over there is all books that not only have I read, but I reread them, and I want to be able to instantly reread them whenever I feel like it. So if I have an urgent need to read the bit in Slan where Jommy has been discovered by the tendril of Slans, I want to put my hand on that book instantly, pull it out and read. I can be quite obsessive about that. And I've moved a lot, so many a day has been spent pulling books out of boxes frantically until I find Sense and Sensibility, so I can read what Marianne Dashwood said to Eleanor Dashwood exactly right now. But out in the living room, there's a nice small hardwood bookshelf on which is my to-read pile. It holds about, 100 and 150 books maybe. They're books I haven't read, all in one place, and they're a range of styles. There's fiction, there's non-fiction, there's historical, because I read omnivorously. There's young adult, there's children, there's a bit of supernatural, I think there's even a horror or two. But fantasy and science fiction tend not to stay on there very long. That's my go-to genres of reading. And so whenever the bookshelf falls below a certain level, I go to replenish it. When I have about 80 or less books on there, I know I need a bit more. So this weekend I decided to go up to Brisbane to stay with my lovely sister and brother-in-law, who would host me as we travelled around op shops and gathered books. I didn't have high hopes. I thought maybe a couple of dozen books I might find, a few here, a few there. Some of the op shops are really good for books, other ones not so great. I was expecting to find a few random things, and that's how it worked for the first, half a dozen bookshops. I went to an op shop on the Friday, we went to a few more on the Saturday, and we found a few things. I'll go through them in a minute. And then, on the Saturday, the second last bookshop, the one I had the highest hope for, because I knew it had an excellent representation of books and it usually had a small dedicated area of science fiction and fantasy, and I thought that was probably going to be the best performer of the lot. I'd been disappointed at a couple of others not to find very much. And when I got there, I was ecstatic to find a whole heap of old magazines. So this one is New Worlds of Science Fiction. Here we've got Gamma. There's Simac Del Rey. How good is that? Worlds of Science Fiction and Fantasy. And two of my go-tos are Roger Zelazny and Jack Vance. I'd love to have a complete collection. It'll probably never happen, but I keep trying. So I found all these ones, and here we've got Galaxy, another Galaxy. This one has Frederick Pohl, which made me pretty excited, and Theodore Sturgeon, which made me even more excited. We've got a Fantastic. Oh, Fantastic is so good. There's Lynn Carter in here, which is another one, and Fritz Lieber, another one who you don't really always see as much as she deserves, I feel. Oops, that stack's falling over. That's not so great. That's not so great at all. Anyway, so from this particular science fiction lot, I paid a bit more perhaps than I'd like, but again, we've got Galaxy, Roger Zelazny. How happy am I about this? I can't even start to tell. Roger Zelazny. Yes. So, and Jack Vance in fantasy and science fiction. So I was very happy. Now, if you look at these, and there were a few other books in the shop like them, you can see someone must have bought them online on auction or in a huge mass and decided they didn't want them, because they're all carefully plastically wrapped, and that's not something the shop does. And at the top, you can see that each one of them has been categorized A few YouTubers out there do actually run shops, so I guess they know more about this stuff than me. But to me, it seems like someone bought a huge number of them, decided they didn't want them, and let them go. Thank you, whoever that someone is. I am very grateful. So I was in heaven over this. I'd got them and I'd got a few other books. And then we went to the last bookstore. It's a Lifeline. I've had good luck there in the past, so I had high hopes. It's got a good book collection, and I thought I might get a good half a dozen. I got over 100 books there. I don't know what happened. I think maybe it was a deceased estate and their whole library just appeared there, or maybe someone had to downsize to go into assisted living or something like that. But this level of science fiction and fantasy, old school, in relatively good condition, some of them, is unbelievable. I've never seen anything quite like it before. So I was overwhelmed. I always start at the back of the collection, because the ones I'm always looking for are Zelazny and Vance. But as I approached the shelf, I found a Vance and then another Vance, 2 Jack Vances at once. Well, I told my beating heart to slow down. My sister was right next to me and she kept handing me armfuls of classics, fantasy and science fiction. So I've got a phenomenal amount to read. I may not ever get through it. This might be the start of the bookshop that I keep grumbling to myself that I need to start online to get rid of the books that I've read but don't want to keep. But have I ever got a good start? Look at Brian Aldiss, Heliconia. I've been telling myself for years that I want to re-engage with Heliconia, but I could never find all 3 at the same time. You could find one, but it was never the first one. I didn't want to start one and not finish. In this shop, I found all 3. All the E.E. Doc Smiths. I've got Skylark, I've got The Lensman, I've got that family, what are they called? That D'Alembert. I don't remember D'Alembert. I know I've read them before. I know I enjoyed them. I remember them hardly at all. I do remember the classic Lensman series. I remember that I liked it, and I tried it again recently. I didn't think they were that great. I thought they'd aged poorly. But I recently had a discussion with someone else on YouTube who says they think they did well, so I'll give them another go. I'll wait till I'm in just the right mood, and then I will binge on E.E. Doc Smith, Skylarks, and Lensman, and all the rest of it. Man. Some of my favourite authors: James Blish, Robert Silverberg. I haven't revisited Silverberg for a long time. I never kept a lot of his books. He always seemed to be an author you could find easily, so I didn't keep them. And then all of a sudden you couldn't find them easily anymore and it was too late. But now I've got a heap to reimagine. Harry Harrison. I love Harry Harrison. I've never actually read The Stainless Steel Rat for President. I don't think I ever found that before. I found Harry Harrison, and though I do have Death World series in different format, this particular format, it's a sphere book, has got such beautiful cover art, and I now have number 2 and number 3, so when I read them all again, I can read them with this beautiful artwork. More Harry Harrison. I think I read this one a long time ago, but I don't remember it. Couldn't help myself. And Simak. I can't tell you how much I like Simak. And all the Simaks that I've never been able to get my hands on were there. It's like astronomical. Highway to Eternity. Where the Evil Dwells. I've never even read those 2. I've never found them before. And Jack Vance. Araminta Station. I don't believe I've ever encountered this one before. More James Blish, A Clash of Symbols. What a beauty. Look at that cover. Spectacular. Stainless Steel Rat Saves the World. Again, Harry Harrison's Stainless Steel Rat. It used to be something you could find in every single book, everywhere, and so I didn't keep them until one day you couldn't find them anywhere. Jack Vance, The Dragon Masters. I have read that, but it wasn't my copy. I'm so excited to get that. The artwork on this is a wraparound, and it is actually quite beautiful. which will suit his writing style because Jack Vance writes beautifully. And here we have Planet of Adventure. I know I've read this one too, but it was a long time ago. Pretty excited. Pretty excited for all of those. But there's piles. There's just piles and piles of books. I've got John Brunner, Norman Spinrad. I'd forgotten all about Norman Spinrad until I saw a YouTube video recently, but I found him. All these books that I found. The Solarians. I don't think I've ever heard of this one before. It's old, printed in the USA. I'm excited. I'm excited for them. Lewis McMaster Bujold. I've got a friend on YouTube who keeps telling me that if I like Tanya Huff, I'll like Bujold even more. And Ursula Le Guin called Gifts that I've never seen or heard of before. Could be good. We'll wait and see. It's possible that I haven't heard of it for a good reason. A. Van Vogt. The Amtrak Wars. I could only find number 2, but I might find number 1 somewhere. Elsewhere Volume 2. That used to be one of my favourite collections of short stories. And I got rid of it at some stage when I was travelling around. I've regretted it ever since. Terry Windling has got an amazing short story in here. Moorcock. I haven't had any much Moorcock for many years, but now I've got heaps. Oh yes. And a Robert Siegel, Alpha Centauri creator, books about whales. I love the combination of aquatic or marine and science fiction, and in this little lot I've got heaps to keep me happy. Michael Moorcock, Ice Schooner. I feel like I probably read this a long time ago when I was living in Melbourne, but not recently, and that cover art is spectacular. Robert Silverberg, Arthur C. Clarke, Jack L. Chalker, Guy Gabriel Kay. I've got the first one of the Fiona Vars, but I never had the second one, and now I've got the second one. How happy am I with that? It's a different artwork. It's not similar or consistent with the first Fiona Var that I've got, but the words will be just as good nevertheless. Piles and piles. Marion Zimmer Bradley, one that I've never heard of, and it looks pretty old. Gail Bordino. Gail Bordino, I really like her mythic fantasy style, and I've got a few of her books. But again, this is an author that I don't see very often where I live. I don't think they're very common in Australia in general. I've got high hopes for this one. Andre Norton, a new one that I haven't read before. Parel Anderson, likewise. More Andre Norton. This one's a really huge one, and I've never even heard of it, so great. And McCarthy, Marion Zimmer Bradley, both in remarkably good condition. Most of these books look as if they haven't been in the second-hand mill. It doesn't look like they ever went on a sale table. It doesn't look like they ever were passed from hand to hand, shop after shop. Here's a pile of ones that I know. Most of them I know I read. This one I know I haven't read. A couple of years ago, I went out to reread all the Anne McCartney Pern books, and I got a fair few of them, but I didn't keep all of them, and one or two I never owned. So the Master Harper of Pern is one that I've never owned. I really like McCarthy's Harper Hold series. They draw this pretty line between Dragonflight and the early books, where you're in a feudal style planet with dragons with no explanation of how humans are there, since they obviously haven't evolved. It's basically very sword and sorcery, only with dragons. And then her later books, when they move down to the Great Southern Continent, they start to explain how come there's humans there. Good explanation. You get a completely different suite of storytelling to what you got in the early ones like Dragonflight. And the Harper Guild series are the sort of the bridge between the two, where you've got the Harpers, who also act as spies, and they almost discover the southern continent. So it's a great series, and I look forward to reading The Master Harper of Pern for the first time. Arthur C. Clarke, Sands of Mars. Oh, that cover. Again, this one you can see it has been in the second-hand mill a little bit. It's got 40 cents marked on it, right in the middle of what's that really pretty artwork. It's Sphere Science Fiction. It was originally published in Australia and New Zealand for 80 cents, so that really dates it. But when you look at it, you can see that although it's been read, it hasn't been thrashed, and it looks in good condition. So that's what made me think that it came from someone's beloved collection. If so, I hope one day they realise that it's gone to someone who loves them all. Philip Jose Farmer. Farmer's an odd one. Philip Jose Farmer and Ron Goulart were a couple that most of my maternal family really liked. So they were always around when I was growing up. I wasn't sure about Jose Farmer. He can be a bit questionable at times. Can't say I always loved his work. But it's been a long time, and I'm anxious to revisit because some of his stories are quite iconic, and he filled a spot in science fiction that I think certainly deserves to be revisited. Again, Jose Farmer, Riverworld, Gods of Riverworld. I remember that I have read this one, and I remember I thought it was really interesting with a few good motifs. Don't remember anything much about it other than that. It must have been 80s or 90s that I read it. Oh yes, Edgar Rice Burroughs. I used to have all the Edgar Rice Burroughs. I realised eventually that my enjoyment of them was disproportionate to the writing. The writing isn't always good. The first 2,000 or 3,000 books are, and some of his outer space books are, but the long drawn out Tarzan series got less and less good, so I let most of them go. I've still got a couple up there, but I'm not sure that I ever actually read I Am a Barbarian. So we'll see how that goes. That should be fun. The Survivors. I used to own this. I got rid of it. I thought I'd be able to replace it. Eventually I have. Ah yes, Van Vogt. Again, I know I've read this. It was a different cover. I can't remember it. I'm looking forward to it. Rendezvous with Rama. Again, it was everywhere, so I got rid of my copy. Replaced. Philip K. Dick, The Man in the High Castle. So Philip K. is one of those ones, everyone knows about him. His books are marvellously adapted. This one was apparently a series, though I haven't watched any of it. Do Androids Dream, of course, iconic, but between Do Androids Dream and Blade Runner, there's a huge gap, and I have to admit, I like Blade Runner better. So Philip K. Dick is a kind of hit or miss-ish guy, and I am looking forward to rereading this. I was very young when I read it the first time, and I don't think I quite got it. Hopefully I quite get it this time. Ha, Cordwainer Smith. I got a lot of Cordwainer Smith, at least 3 or 4. Again, it's an author that's fairly rare to find, but in the 90s, Australia was everywhere. Probably because I'm in Australia, and Australia refers to New Australia, a savanna planet that was colonised by Australians, and it was everywhere. I enjoyed it. I've been wanting to reread it for about 3 years. The library doesn't have it. Shame on them. But Deborah's Omnivorous Library now does have it. I've got a huge pile here. There's Niven and Pornell. There's Dream Park, which I'm really looking forward to reading again. A Sharon, I haven't read before. And The Borrables. I've heard about this, but I've never encountered it. It's got a good chance of being really, really tongue-in-cheek and weird. So the back says, "Don't get caught, Borrable law. You may have seen them and not know it. They dwell in a shadowy city where an honourable name is the only glory, and bloody battle the only way to come by it. They look like normal children, except for their pointy ears. They act like normal children would, if they could." I have such high hopes for that one. The hook is amazing. Okay, Orson Scott Card. There is a lot of Orson Scott Card. They're in various piles. I was really excited to find Ender's Game. I read Speaker for the Dead a few years ago, and ever since then I've been wanting to reread Ender's. Orson Scott Card is hard to find. It's hard to find here anyway. I don't know about other places. Maybe on the internet it's easy, but I was really, really thrilled to find those. Piles and piles of other things. There are so many books that I've never heard of, and quite a few authors I've never heard of as well. So I'm actually really excited. Robert Sheckley, I'd almost forgotten about him when I encountered him. Paul Cook, never heard of him. But Robert Sheckley I have, though not this one. Michael Moorcock. This is one of the ones that's so old that the ISBN isn't even on the back. And there's a few in here somewhere that I could not get Goodreads or the internet to admit they exist. What have got? Paul Russo, Philip Jose Farmer, Michael Moorcock, Galaxy. Oh yes. Used to have this one too. Glad to get it again. I think a couple of them aren't great, but there were a couple of stories in here that I really liked. I think it was the Silverberg I really liked, and the Alfred Bester. Looking forward to finding out again. Bruce Sterling. Samuel R. Delaney sort of vanished from the shelves a while back. Don't know why, but I seem to remember really liking Delaney. Not enough to keep his books as I travelled around, but yeah, okay. George Turner. Never heard of Mick Farron, but high hopes. Sounds good. Look at this artwork. Stuart Gordon I have heard of. I haven't heard of this series, and regrettably they only had the number 3 in the series. I don't know if I'll be able to find 1 and 2. I hope I can, because this one actually sounds really interesting. I think I will like that a great deal. I might even read just number 3 without 1 and 2. I used to do that a lot when I was younger. We'll see. Thank you, BookTube, for reminding me of things that I'd forgotten. Someone was talking about Simon Hawke just the other day, and I'd forgotten how much I used to love the Time Traveller series. I've read a few of them randomly, not in any sort of order. But yeah, here they are. Time Corp, Simon Hawke. Excited. Orson Scott Card. Drowned Tide. I feel like I have read this or encountered this in the past. Don't remember it at all. It'll be brand new to me. John Gregory. Don't know him. Looking forward to learning. Robert Silverberg, Tower of Glass. This is my sister's favourite. Robert Silverberg, apparently. I probably have read it. I can't say I actually remember it. But yeah, it should be good. Looking forward to it. Oh yes. Modiste Jr. I'm not sure. I think I have read this. I know I've read a couple of Modiste Juniors, but they are another one of those authors that you just don't see that much in the shops that I go to. I don't know when I last saw one, so I was really excited by this. Fifth Planet. Look at that spectacular artwork. I know nothing about this except that one of the authors is actually an astronomer. The older of the two, I think it's a father and son combination writing together. The older one is an actual astronomer. That artwork is spectacular. Goodreads and the internet will not admit that this book exists. If you search by author, they just tell you that the author is an astronomer. Fifth Planet. I guess we'll find out. What we've got here. Oh, yes. Lawrence James, Simon Rack. Oh, how gorgeous is that art. But yes, I know I've read that. Here's another one that the internet just does not believe exists. And because the internet doesn't believe exists, and because there isn't a whole lot of description on the back, I've got no idea what it is. I feel like it's a horror, but there's something about the writing when you just flick through that makes me think I could enjoy it a great deal. Set of short stories. There's one in... Look at that. that. There's a Bradbury in here and a Sheckley that I'm really looking forward to. I hadn't heard of this one. And it's newer than a lot of the classic sci-fi. It seems to be new. Haven't heard of it. It seems to be newer than a lot of the classic sci-fi I do read. But as I was flicking through and reading what it was about, I remember thinking that this reminds me significantly of another book I recently read. Not Blackfish. Australis? It was set in Antarctica after climatology has changed the Antarctica into a cool but survivable land. And I'm sure I'll remember it sometime. But this book sounded so similar but written a bit earlier, and I thought I've got to read this and see if it really is as similar as it seems to be. Raymond Harris. I know the name, but I don't know that I've ever read any of his. David Biscoff. Totally forgot about him too. Whole heap of other ones that I don't know. Olaf Stapledon. Really rare to find them around here. This has got the original price on it, I think, because that price tag down there has got the name of a warehouse, so I think it was actually sold discounted to $1. I'm going to say that probably happened quite a long time ago. Manifest Destiny. And by accident, Moorcock, the King of the Swords. Again, all that really beautiful early Moorcock art happening in these piles. By accident, I got Dragon Warriors, the ultimate role-playing game. One of those ones where you go through and you choose a thing and a number. I know I read some of those back in the 80s, but it was before I was really into role-playing, and having done actual RPG with actual people around a table with some really good GMs, I'm not sure how I'm going to go with this. I think I'm going to end up getting rid of it. I can't see that being a long-term proposition for me. I also came across this A Gift of Dragons by Anne McCaffrey. I was intrigued by the hardcover, and it's illustrated. It's actually quite beautiful. It was a library book from Cooloola Shire Libraries that they've given up and put up for sale. I don't know that I've ever read it before. It'll be interesting. Now, as well as all those really exciting science fiction, I found in one shop, not the last and wonderful shop, but in one of the earlier ones, Terry Pratchett, you may observe, I am very fond of. I've read most of his books. They are rare as hen's teeth. You don't find them in Bookfest, you don't find them in op shops, you don't find them in second-hand shops, because as soon as they land, they're gone like that. You have to walk in within 10 minutes of them landing on the shelf, or you won't get them. So I was astonished to come across Making Money in hardcover and in really, really good condition. The only thing you can really say about this Making Money is that the pages are slightly yellowed and mottled, as you can see from the edges, and that the pages themselves have coloured a little bit. But other than that, it's in really good condition. I think it might even be better than my Making Money copy. And again, Equal Rights and The Light Fantastic. I have both of those. It's certainly better condition than my Light Fantastic, which has been read to death. And Equal Rights for many years was one of my favourite of the early Terry Pratchett. So again, my copy has been read to death. You can barely read the name on the spine. I might swap these out, or I might sell them. I just want to know that if you get a Terry Pratchett in good condition with that spectacular early artwork, I just want to know that it goes to someone who really appreciates Terry Pratchett and doesn't think of it as, I don't know, some people collect it because they can, but it's such a waste of the book to have it and not read it. Okay, Charlaine Harris. Everyone remembers that she wrote a Sookie Stackhouse vampire series, but she also wrote a really good series about someone who got hit with lightning, after which they could hear the dead. It's a short series. I think there's only 4 in it. I already own 2. I was really excited to find the other two, which I don't own. As well as that, Charlene Harris has another series called Midnight Crossroad. And when I came across this book, I was a bit excited. I first heard about it from my sister, who was with me for my extravaganza of booking. Thank you so much for showing me around. I thought she loaned me this book, but she doesn't have that book. So when I saw it, I had to get it, because last time I tried to reread it, I tried to get it from the library and the library didn't have it. So now, Omnivorous Library does. What else? Oh yes, a whole heap of more modern science fiction, or at least what I think of as more modern. I know that David Brin isn't really that modern. He's been writing for quite a while, but I just discovered him this year, so to me it seems modern. And this one has got, again, a marine theme with what looks like electronic dolphins, or maybe mutant dolphins. Who knows? I'll find out. Neil Asher, one I don't have, and I do quite like Asher's writing. Another David Brin. A C.J. Sharon. There's quite a lot of Sharon in this haul. I've been getting back into Sharon. I loved her Port Eternity style. I never got into that long series that she's been writing for years and years, Foreigner, etc. But I think it's a beautiful writing style that she's got. I am looking forward to reading more of it. Well, before I discovered that I'd hit the mother load of classic fantasy and sci-fi, I bought a few other ones. I've got The Fifth Wave, that's modern sci-fi. I don't know too much about it, except that someone did recommend that to me. Ray Bradbury, what looks like a new Ray Bradbury. We'll see. Ray Bradbury can be hit or miss. And I've been looking for this book for a while. I read The Handmaid's Tale back in the day before it was famous. I don't know why it suddenly exploded into everyone's consciousness in the last few years, and all of a sudden, this is the most amazing book ever written. I don't remember it being that amazing. I remember it being pretty good. A nice book, but not phenomenal. And I've wanted to reread it ever since they exploded it onto Netflix or whatever, to find out if it's the way I remember it or if it's the way everyone else says. Next to it was The Testaments, which is the new option. I have not been terribly interested in reading this, but when my sister saw that I was getting The Handmaid's Tale, she said I really should read this because it won awards and it was amazing as well. It's considerably more publisher approved than the original one. We'll see. Glow, this was from one of my earliest stops and op shops. I think it's a bit young adult, but sometimes that's a fun thing. I had this recommended to me already, and that was actually already on my to read or want to read shelf on Goodreads, as was this one, which a couple of people have recommended, and I think at least one of them was a YouTuber. Do You Dream of Terror 2? I can't remember which YouTuber. If it's you, comment below so I can give you credit. Again, before I realised that the motherload had been hit, I was just ambling along, taking a bit of this and a bit of that. I found Parsifal or A Knight's Tale, something I've always planned to read but never got around to. The artwork's pretty good, and I think that'll fill an idle moment when I want a little bit of fairy story and a little bit of mythology. Jules Verne, Around the World in 80 Days. I've been meaning to reread this for a long time. It's been surprisingly hard to put my hands on a copy, so this is a nice Penguins Classics copy, and I'm happy to find it. The Tales of Beetle the Bard in hardcover. I've never read that. Never really felt the need, but I think it will be a bit of fun. A bit of fun is good. I've reread the Harry Potter series so many times that I probably need to expand. This is another one outside the realms of classic fantasy and science fiction. Again, thoroughly recommended by my sister, and I took her recommendation for this one. Hello, bird. Please don't choose my books. The Silver Sword is one of the old classic style Puffin children's books. I really like the old school Puffin children's books. They're getting hard to get. I've got a moderate feeling that I might already have the Silver Sword. I know I read it a long time ago. If I do, I'll probably try to find someone else who appreciates the genre. I also got The Jungle Book. Funnily enough, while I love Rudyard Kipling's poetry, and Kim is one of my favourite all-time literature novels, I've never read The Jungle Book. I don't know if this can be an unabridged version or not. I'm not really quite sure about that, but it does have some pretty nice illustrations. And I guess I'll find out. I can't see anything on it that says abridged, but you know that doesn't always mean much. Okay, we've got a historic book, The Queen's Man. Again, before I realised that I was going to be stressing my credit card beyond bearing with classic fantasy and sci-fi. I think this is an Eleanor of Aquitaine style book, age book, and Eleanor of Aquitaine and her three miscellaneous sons is actually my favourite period of English history. I don't read that much English history, but when I do, Richard, John, Henry and their various weirdnesses have always been my favourite. Eleanor of Aquitaine herself was a fascinating woman. Can't remember how or why I got this. It was on my want to read shelf. So I'm going to guess that someone who I really trust recommended it and I put it on there. I hope I figure out who it was when I read it. And this one, again, non-fiction, beautiful book. This was a present from Sue. Thank you, Sue. I'm pretty sure you'll watch this sooner or later. I am excited about this one. From the wonders of Imperial Baghdad to the dark lands of the enders of the earth, The Book of Roads and Kingdoms by Richard Fidler. Richard Fidler, I do know. I think this is probably going to be a really nicely researched and quite readable book when I'm in the mood for some interesting and I suppose almost niche history. Anyway, that is my amazing book haul. The best book haul ever. I'm going to be deep in reading for a long, long time, and much as I will probably regret it, I'm going to have to let some of these books go. There's only so much room in a house. There's a wall over there. I could put another bookshelf on all the wall, perhaps. Thanks for watching. Muchas gracias, Anna and Steve, for hosting me in Brisbane and putting up with me babbling on about books and going around looking for more books. I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, talk to me about books.